Kiwi.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Phil Goff.
Labour leader Phil Goff is with us. Good morning to you, Phil.
Yeah, g'day, Wammo.
Now, let's first up talk about EQNZ, the situation on the ground in Christchurch. Leanne Dalziel has come under some criticism for politicising the situation there in the eastern suburbs, but she is saying that the situation is rather dire.
Yeah, look, I know the government said, this isn't bipartisan politics, but the truth of the matter is Leanne was right. Look, we're not politicking about it, but local MPs have got an absolute responsibility to speak out on behalf of their people, and she was utterly vindicated by the National Defence, Civil Defence Coordinator, John Hamilton, who said, and I'm quoting, "We grossly underappreciated the scale of the damage in suburban areas," and they did. And, I was out there working a week ago, talking to people, had no sewerage, no water, no electricity, damage to their homes, liquefaction on their sections, no shops or service stations open in the area. And we were making the point that, things were grim out there, but, people were being remarkably patient. But that was a week ago, and many of those people still have none of those things. I'm not blaming the infrastructure people. I know that the Orion Power Company are working really hard. People are trying to get the water on. The technos out there are just, working 12-hour days. They're doing a great job. But I think the government and civil defence were focused so much on the CBD, where people died, that they forgot that for the living, life has to go on, and it's bloody hard when you don't have the basic essentials in life in a modern city.
What do you make of the government's move to have a stronger influence in what's going on there? They've kind of sidelined the council. Jerry Brownlee's waiting on getting his hands dirty. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I was in support of the government having extraordinary powers. The Prime Minister and Jerry Brownlee both have wartime powers effectively to get on and do the job. But with that power goes responsibility, and the responsibility is that they've got to use those powers properly. And Jerry caused a hell of a lot of consternation in Christchurch with his comment that, all the old buildings were going to go. They were to blame for people dying. Actually, Jerry, they weren't. It was the two buildings that killed most people were quite modern buildings. There was no place for heritage in the future history of Christchurch. He went on to overkill, and I think he's recognised that now. Again, I'm not about politicking on it. I want to work with Jerry and John Carter and John Key to do what we can for the city. But having given them those powers, we have an obligation to make sure they use it responsibly. If there are dangerous buildings, yes, of course they've got to come down. Human safety comes first. But there are a lot of other buildings that you don't put the bulldozer through until you've made a considered assessment. You don't destroy the heritage for all time until there's an understanding of what you can afford to rebuild, what you can't, what's sustainable and what isn't. So don't go like a bull at a gate at it, Jerry. Do it in a considered way. Take other people on board with you, locally elected people, the council, the stakeholders, the business people. Don't try to do it on your own and impose your own personal views. And use your powers responsibly.
Particularly also some decent architects as well. I'd put them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. From all over the country.
Yeah, exactly. A week ago we talked about some of the ways that the government could possibly pay for the damage that's been done there. A week on, is there a plan that Labour could support for a way to pay for this big problem?
Well, there isn't a plan yet, but I'm sure there will be, and we'll look at working constructively with the government. Last week I said we won't go along with the Bill English program where before the earthquake you say, I want to slash student loans and I want to slash working for families. Now the earthquake's come along, here's a great pretext for doing it on. I'm not interested in that sort of politics. We're not going to go along with that.
What about a levy?
Well, I don't, the costs came out from Treasury just yesterday afternoon, and they were down on the costs that we expected, which is good news. The two quakes together maybe will hit 15 billion rather than the 20 billion, which was the upper limit before. For reconstruction, you talk about borrowing. The building will take years, and the payment of rebuilding a whole city, that's going to be over a generation. It's not going to be on this year's taxpayers or next year's. I'm not in favour of hammering people who already have so little money in their pocket that the economy went back into recession before we even had the earthquake. Hammering people who don't have anything that they're able to give at the moment is just a recipe for forcing the country backwards, not forward.
So do you support the Greens' move of putting a levy on high-income earners?
Well, if the government decides that they need more revenue, yes, that's where it's going to have to come from. John Key's going to have to give up some of the extra $1,000 a week he gave himself in tax cuts. But I don't support putting it on middle and low income earners who are struggling right now to even pay their bills, and because they're not spending money, the country's going deeper into recession. I think you can probably do without it, and John Key said that he reckoned that you could as well. But if it's going to go on anyone, don't take it out on people with working for families who are middle income or lower income. Don't take it out on students who are struggling to get along as it is. I think that the government was premature in giving huge tax cuts to people at the time.
Yeah.
They had no money, and they're effectively borrowing to pay for the $2.5 billion in tax cuts for the top.
So could you combine forces with Labour, perhaps the Maori Party as well, and get that one over the line?
Well, look, I'm looking at the government being as good as its word and working cooperatively with us on it, and we'll try and do that. It doesn't mean to say there won't be differences in political opinion, and where there are, they should be stated, openly and honestly. But what I'm looking not to happen is the earthquake being used as an excuse to impose an ideological agenda. That can't happen.
Okay, thanks very much, Phil. Cheers.
Okay, thanks, mate.
See ya.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Leader of the Labour Party.